Hello, welcome to our evening edition of Pre-Calculus. Today is Tuesday, and that must make it like March the 4th, I believe. So this is our third flipped video. We watched one last Thursday night, and then sometime in our snow break, Friday night or on through Monday night, you had a second one to watch, and this is number 3. Please remember to take notes so you have full credit for watching this video. I'm not going to add a whole lot of new information because what we're missing in simplifying trig IDs is actually practice, which takes place in the classroom, of which we've had very little. So there's not a whole lot of new information. So you will see that as we go today. No apologies, but just an announcement so you know what to expect. Please watch the video, even though a lot of it is review. All right. I was wondering how it's coming along with this trig simplification, and I got some input from you today that some of you were troubled on how to start these problems. So I think I want to zero in to discussing that and just figure out what I can do to improve your possibilities here. I also want to start the timer. I forgot. Hold on. I'll put it on 10. It doesn't matter if we go over a little bit, as long as it doesn't go over 15. All right. So let us go ahead and get our comp books open. And again, if you have room on the last page, where either that or the response page, the last page where you had simplifying trig expressions, you can add any notes to that. So you can see in some ways there won't be a whole lot of additions, but if you can find anything to write down from this video, please do so on those pages. All right, let's get started. All right. What I want to mention to you is that 5.1b has 15 to 20, 21 to 26, and 27 to 32. Those were due in class. We worked on them in class on Friday, and now if we'd had time, we would have checked those in class today, and so that'll happen tomorrow. I want to address the last couple ones from that assignment. So if you were able to complete that assignment successfully, pull it out. And if you were not, then go ahead and pull it out anyway. So I'm going to give you some clues or actually do some of these problems with you. Before we jump in, you have to have your trig travel case. If you don't have that written down on any of your pages, please add it now. They are factoring, change to sine and cosine, substituting trig IDs, adding and multiplying by the conjugate. I just want to mention this one, substituting trig IDs. We have quite a few, and I hope that that's not what's bogging you down, because they boil down to a couple trig IDs. The ones that come up the most are sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, which you'll recall is one of the Pythagorean IDs. And you can quickly get the other two by this little trick. And this is how I know by heart. In my mind, I can get the other two by taking this one, and I'm doing this mentally. I'm writing it down for your sake. I'm going to divide everything by sine squared in my mind, because I can memorize that one pretty easily. So what does that create? Well, sine squared over sine squared is 1. Cosine over sine is the cotangent. So when it's squared, it's cotangent squared. And 1 over sine is the cosecant, and in this case, it's squared. So one of the other trig ID I can get pretty easily in my mind mentally. So in my mind, I'm taking sine squared, dividing it by itself. And if I divide this by sine squared, and I have to do the same here and here. Here it creates a 1. Here it creates a cotangent. Now you have to know that cosine over sine is cotangent, so bring that along with you. in your beautiful mind, and 1 divided by sine squared is cosecant. You have to bring that along as well. Now how do I get the other Pythagorean ID? In my mind, I divide each of these this time by, you want to guess? Say it a little louder. It is cosine squared. And that creates the other Pythagorean ID. Sine over cosine is tangent. And cosine over cosine is 1. And 1 over cosine is secant. So, see how mentally I can come up with all the Pythagorean trig IDs from the first one. To get this one, I divided everything by sine squared, and to get this one, I divided everything by cosine squared. So hopefully that is a little helpful trick that I have up my sleeve. If you would take it and stuff it up your sleeve now, you will find it to be helpful. And I'd say these are helpful, but most of all, the heavy hitters, when we're looking at that big list of 20-some trig IDs, think of this one and sometimes the 2 I just erased, and then the deathbed ones. These are the ones you need to know very well, even to the point of recalling them on your deathbed. So, I'd say don't get too overwhelmed. Know these. And you need to know that sine is the reciprocal of cosecant. Cosine is the reciprocal of secant. And tangent is the reciprocal of cotangent. How do you like that the dramatic hand motions? Alright, so that's just sort of some strategy. Let's actually erase those because they're in front of you. I would have your trig IDs open when you're doing these problems. And for those who already know that they got this assignment correct, you're just sort of maybe closing it and trying to think through them again to see if it's still fresh. So, well, number 27, you were asked to simplify the cotangent times the secant. So looking at your box of tools or your things that you've packed, it's not factorable, but and I don't see a trig ID staring me in the face, and there's nothing to add, so it must be changed to sine and cosine. So hopefully your mathematical nose will lead you, that's sort of your sense of mathematical smell, that will lead you to changing these to sine and cosine. So cotangent is cosine over sine. We just erased that. So I've rewritten this as that. And secant is 1 over cosine. And if you write it in this vertical way, you can see that, let me find my answer key here. You can see when you write it in that direction, this number 27, that the cosines cancel, and it just leaves you with 1 over sine. But it's not totally simplified when it has a fraction line like that. So we want to write the reciprocal cosecant as the answer. So that's number 27. And you'll notice that number 28 follows the exact same strategy. So apply it again on 28. On 29, let's see if we can, those of you who did it several days ago, probably Friday during class, see if you can look at it afresh now. And those who haven't done it, you're addressing it now. Let us see, what can we do from our trig travel case? Is it a good candidate for factoring? It is not. It's already factored. Is it a good candidate to change to sine and cosine? I believe on number 29 that will happen. Is it a good candidate to substituting trig IDs? Not as it stands. What about adding or multiplying by the conjugate. I think our mathematical nose should smell out that probably the best thing to do is to get rid of these parentheses. And you actually do that by multiplying. So I guess I should stuff another thing into our Trig travel case, and that is just plain old algebra, which we never leave home without. So just distributing like you do in any algebraic expression, you get sine times cosecant. Oh, these aren't thetas, they're those, phi things you were telling me about. And then sine times sine squared phi. Alright, so now it looks more like something we can deal with. Sine and cosecant. Now we're going to change it to sine and cosine because sine phi is 1 times cosecant. Cosecant is sine 1 over sine phi. I'll just leave sine squared. Sine phi times 1 over sine phi. These cancel and just leaves a 1. And any time you see a sine or a cosine that's squared and attached to a 1, that should be a trig ID. And if you look at the rearrangement of sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, oh, there's our, I'll finish this problem and then I'll close this section down. So sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So this is what's in your mind. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. But I want it to look like this before I can substitute. So I'm going to move in my mind, I'm going to move the sine squared over. And I get cosine squared equals 1 minus sine squared. Can't get my thetas out of here. Alright. So now 1 minus sine squared matches that, so I can substitute the equivalent cosine squared phi. Alright, so several of you got that way back on Friday, so hopefully you were able to recreate those steps once more. Now number 30, I don't think I need to discuss it because, well, actually I do. So I'm going to move this. You can, if you need it, you can pause the video. Oh yeah, I need to close this section down. So I'll be right back with you on the next video, part 2.